real excited that we've got Elizabeth Sullivan talking to us, Sowing the Seeds of Innovation, Blockchain Education for Future Leaders. So I'm looking at this room and I'm seeing future leaders. So you've got the perfect audience. So welcome, and welcome to Simply CyberCon, Elizabeth Sullivan.
Thank you for that warm welcome. So I'm very excited to be here this evening. We have a lot to unpack. But first, I have a confession to make. But first, I want you to confess something to me. Okay? Can we play a little bit of game? So by show of hands here, how many of you have ever heard of blockchain technology? Excellent. Okay. By show of hands, how many here have ever purchased cryptocurrency? Smart. All right, by show of hands, how many have ever purchased a digital asset, maybe an NFT? All right. Now, last one. By show of hands, how many of you, when you purchased your cryptocurrency or an NFT for your very first time, actually knew what you were doing? That's my confession. Yeah, I don't think any of us did for a while there. You know, I invested in blockchain and crypto in 2018, so I've kind of been a part of the conversation from the get-go. I didn't fully understand what it meant. So when my family, my kids would ask me, I realized not only do I need to understand it, but I need to be able to explain it at a basic level. Because after all, our kids, the younger generation, are the ones who are actually going to be using the technology that we're building. Now I'm going to talk about blockchain specifically today, not technicality-wise, but I want you to think rather your industry and your niche as I'm talking. Maybe this will spark something in you, and that is actually the goal. So I'm going to give you the why, I'm going to give you the how, and then we're going to talk about the way. So the why do I feel like it's important to talk about the younger generation with the technology that we're building? Well, because they're going to be using it. I was doing some research for this conversation, and I thought, well, let's look at the industries and the niches before us that have done a really good job of onboarding kids. I thought, well, let's start with toys. So how many of you remember having maybe a doctor's set? Yes, with the little bag and the cuff, a little temperature, the thermometer, or maybe the construction set was a little bit more your speed, where you had the screwdriver and the hammer. You got to learn these fields and industries through the toys that were in our hands. How about light brights? Yeah, good old light brights. Circuitry. I mean, think about what we were instilling at a very young age. So toys are a great example. Now let's go on to books. Books are another way that industries or your niche can onboard the younger generation and teach them about you. So if I were to say one fish, two fish, you might say, you passed. Now, but really, when is the last time that you have read that book? It's been quite a while. I was hoping there was no new parents in here. You'd really ruined that line for me. It's been quite a while, and yet we still remember the information. Well, that's because Dr. Seuss did an amazing job at bringing basic fundamentals like rhymes, colors, numbers to our hands, to readers. It's not that hard to introduce what you do on a technical level, on a basic level through story. I actually did it. I introduced technology or cybersecurity through a children's story. I'll tell you, I was at NFT NYC this past year, and I was in an Uber with a friend, and they were explaining to me what they do in cybersecurity. How many of you are here in cybersecurity? Okay, so you're going to understand what I'm saying. And the beautiful thing is, if you don't, I wrote a children's book on it. It's Tech Shield Camp. But I was listening to him explain to me that he was part of, I want to say it was Team Red. And the red team does this and that. The blue team does this. And then there's a purple team. While he's explaining the different roles in cybersecurity, this book was writing itself in my head. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, I think you just helped me write next month's book. And it was basically because if I can inspire a child to want to be in cybersecurity on the offense or the defense, or maybe sum it all together, as I understand it's what Team Purple is, then maybe that could change the trajectory of that child's life. So you guys, we're doing a really good job of building some pretty cool things here. The blockchain is one of them. We've talked about AI. We have to explain phishing scams to our age. Well, what about the younger generation? What are we going to have to explain to them? How are we going to onboard them? I feel like coding is actually one of the recent things that have done a really good job of this. So we have toys, we have books. Now we can go into the game factor, and we can think of like phones, tablets, we have Roblox, Minecraft. Well, coding harnessed those, and then they took it to the after-schools camp sector. And they were like, we'll teach you coding. I mean, kids as young as 5 and 8 had camps to go to. We'll teach you coding on how to build your own Minecraft world or Roblox world. Absolute geniusness. So my question today here is, what are you doing? Maybe what are you inspired to do to onboard the younger generation in the technology that you're developing? And not only that, but can you explain it to your friends and family? Can you explain it to maybe a 5th grader? I feel like if we can explain it to a 5th grader, then we all have hope. I decided about 2 years ago to go on this big adventure of writing a whole bunch of children's books explaining basic blockchain technology concepts to kids. Like I said, we can explain it to a 5th grader, we all have hope. So I started with just blockchain, and then we went into things like proof of work, proof of stake, ledgers, layer 1, layer 2, and each one of these is its children's book all in of itself. So I went on this run, and I thought, I'm going to self-publish one a month until VCon of the next year, which actually just happened. So at this time, I had 2 children's books under my belt. There's a whole bunch of concepts in blockchain that you can delve into. So I thought one a month shouldn't be too hard, right? Yeah, it was a lot. It was very hard, but I'm going to give you the how in just a moment. So I thought, all right, 1 year from now, I'll have one a month. That's like maybe 14 books. That was the nice big goal. That was a way to actually onboard the next generation. They ended up postponing it. So now we're at 17 books later. But what I learned is that there are a lot of curious people out there who need this information in bite-sized digestible chunks. And sometimes children's books are not just for kids. Sometimes they can be for the adults and the grandparents and the educators as well. So that was really, really fun to do. But I want to tell you also how I did it, because that's going to be important. And like I said, when I'm talking about the books or I'm talking about blockchain, I want you to think about your sector that you're in and think of the areas that your niche is onboarding children. Just let your minds go, let your hearts go, and we'll figure out where it gets there, okay? So the how. I thought, I'm going to write all these children's books, right? But I have kids. I've got a job. I have many interests and hobbies. They all have sports. How am I going to do one book a month? And like sometimes your goal can seem incredibly massive. And it's like I saw somebody put it on a slide earlier. How do you eat an elephant? And it's just one bite at a time. Well, that's what I figured. I would just take a little bit of a walk every day. So I adapted a principle that I want to share with you. That's if you have any sort of a calling, any sort of a big goal, this is how to get that done. So we talked about the why. My approach was taking a piece of what John Maxwell talked about one day, and it was, he says, if you have a tree in your yard and you want to cut it down, if you only have 5 chops a day, you go at it every day with 5 chops, eventually that tree will fall. Now it depends on the tree. The tree is your goals here, okay? Now, it depends on the tree as far as how long it takes to fall. It might be a young baby little sapling, or it might be a nice big sturdy oak. You might have a massive goal, or you just might want to eat better for a few weeks. You know what I mean? So it depends on how big the tree is as to when it will fall. It also depends on how sharp your axe is. How long have you been in your industry? Like, how sharp are your skills as to how fast it'll fall? But if you go at it every day with 5 chops, eventually it will fall. It could depend on your muscle structure or your form. So how long have you been in your niche? What is your network like? We said skills. But eventually that tree will fall. So I thought, okay, if I just go at this 5 chops a day, 5 minutes a day, and it will add up. And it did. It did add up to these 17 books. But it wasn't without a lot of fear. but it wasn't without a lot of strategy as well. Now, the secret in those 5 minutes is not as strict as you would think. I'm not a structured person. Like the thought of a timer or an alarm or a schedule just freaks me out. I want to fly with the wind and see where it takes you. That's why when I was in the back of an Uber writing Tech Shield Camp, I wasn't sure what the following month's topic would be, and it just came to me. But that's how I like to live life. You still have to have structure in order to accomplish goals. So these 5 minutes helped me do that. So sometimes I would take advantage of what I like to call micro moments. Now, micro moments can be things like your drive time. Drive time is so incredibly valuable. And all I did was I simply swapped out the time that I would listen to music, and instead I learned about basic blockchain technology concepts, or maybe on how to write a book. I would educate myself in the area that I was interested in. Another micro minute could be when if you have kids in sports or if you're at the doctor's office, just taking a little bit of time to think out your thoughts. Or if you've already gone so far as to think out your thoughts, sit down and edit them. I like to have it in paper and in the cloud. This way, if it's appropriate to be on your phone, wonderful, but if not, you can still edit something. There's a lot of little moments that can add up, and these 5 chunks, I don't want them to be so structured because of this. So let's say you take 5 minutes and you sit down and you're like, all right, it's 7:55 p.m. and I'm going to give myself to 8 o'clock and see what comes up to it. Now, if you set an alarm for 5 minutes, then that alarm goes off and you look up and it's going to interrupt what I like to call flow state, because sometimes when you're sitting there, you look up and it's an hour later. But it's really about creating the structure, the environment, and the pattern to allow yourself to enter that flow state, and that's what that 5 minutes is doing. So if I talk to you and you're thinking, well, I have a really good idea on I could build this to onboard kids in my industry, but I've never done that before, or that's not really like my area. First off, if it hasn't been done before, then that's a really, really good thing. It's also a problem. It's also why I'm talking to you today, because you're building something cool. They're going to be using it. And if nobody's onboarding kids, but that thought is given to you, then maybe that's your gift to bring to life. So I thought, what do I do with all these children's books? Let me look and see, if any sort of education curriculum has been created. I went on to Teachers Pay Teachers. Does anybody know what that is? Yeah, it's kind of like the Etsy for teachers. It's like where you can find, worksheets and curriculums and different sorts like that. And I typed in blockchain. I would encourage any of you, if you have an idea right now, later, go to Teachers Pay Teachers. Type in your niche and industry and start narrowing down to what you think your idea could be. Just see what's out there. So I typed in blockchain. I narrowed it down to the 5th grade level. There were less than 30 results. And I would say half of them were like crossword puzzles and word searches. They weren't really my idea of what blockchain curriculum could be. So sometimes when you are brave enough to step into a really tough goal, it can build upon itself. And it doesn't mean that you see that from the beginning, but if you're going with the flow, it can really open things up. So when I pulled up that and I saw the results on that, I was like, all right, all these children's books can't be for nothing. I'm going to build upon this, and last week actually released Unit 1 of Blockchain Basics curriculum. It's available on Teachers Pay Teachers, and it's based off of one of the books. It just introduces it at a fundamental level. We're talking about spelling, reading comprehension, quizzes, all that sort, teacher guides, question and answers. It's all in there. But it was really inspiring, and at the same time, kind of intimidating, the fact that it didn't exist yet. But that's a really good thing that I did those 5 minutes. Because you know what? If I hadn't had all of those minutes to back up what I was doing, I probably wouldn't have had the nerve to do what I was doing or to do the next thing. And that's the other magic about, just taking 5 chops a day to that tree, to your goal. It doesn't have to be so intimidating or monumental that it prevents you from taking action, but it has another magical component. What it's going to do is it's going to build that confidence within yourself. Why? Well, because your brain can't lie to you anymore when you have spent days, weeks, months on end, even taking a little bit of action towards your goals and progress every day. So when I got to a conference last year and I was able to say, hi, I'm Elizabeth Sullivan, I'm a speaker and an author, it was not because I didn't feel any sort of imposter syndrome at that point, because I had done all of these results that actually backed up what I said that I was. So those 5 minutes, those 5 chops, they're extremely fundamental in building the habit as well as getting the job done. You follow me there? So I would encourage you to do your own research and maybe like search internally right now and see, where you can use your gifts and your expertise and your knowledge in your industry, and maybe onboard those kids. We have a lot going on here, and they're gonna need to know what's going on. And so if you can just take the basics and present it to them, then I think that we have a lot of hope. There's a reason that I wrote books on blockchain technology basics, because I wanted to be part of this. I wanted to be part of the technology sector, but I also wanted to honor everything that you guys are building. It's like, what can I bring to the table that would honor this? I have words and I have creativity, but I'm not a coder, I am not an engineer, I am not a developer. But if I let that stop me, then this component wouldn't be in the niche. So if you're having any sort of fear or doubts or why me or I couldn't do that, please, that's not what it's all about. We can talk about this afterwards if you'd like to. I think that your gifts and the thought that you have right now is actually given to you to bring to life, because you have a unique way of doing that. And it would be a shame if you didn't get that done. Okay, so we have the how, we had the why before that, and the last thing I want to talk about is the way. So I decided to meet them where they are, and I think that's a great idea for you as well. Wherever your gifts are, if you can make an app, if you can make a game, wonderful. But the way is meeting them where they are. That could be in school. That could be in their phones, in VR, in front of them. That can be after school extracurricular activities. I recently met a gentleman who has created drone curriculum for kids, and it is just taking off. They are loving that, and it didn't exist before. So there's always a sector if you're brave enough to bring it to life. I really feel like you have a perspective and a special niche and angle that's given to you. So I really hope to see some things come out of this. I'm going to open it up in just a moment for a Q&A. I think that we have a real opportunity here, and it's not just about what we're building, but it's about serving the next generation as well. So I'm seeing holes, I'm seeing gaps, and I would love to see us fill in those gaps. Does anybody have any questions? Let's keep it basic, because there's a reason I wrote basic blockchain technology books. So let's keep it basic, but on anything like that, or on self-publishing, children's books, curriculum, I'm willing to take questions. All right. Okay. Are you asking what's the easiest way to write a book or to sell a book?
Probably maybe write one, publish it. Maybe I don't know where it stops. If you want to stop it,
Right.
having somebody buy it, whether it's free.
Yeah. So I think I have some time to answer this question, actually, and there's a great answer and an unfortunate answer. So I can tell you in probably like 5 steps on how to write a book. You have your copy, which is your story. You have, so that's your print file. If you have illustrations, that's going to be within your print file, so format that together. So once you have your print file and you have your cover file, you're going to go to either KDP, that's like Amazon, Kindle Direct Publishing is what KDP stands for, or you can go to ingramspark.com. And those are 2 areas that you can upload your files and then release your book. Now on KDP, you can opt to use their free ISBN. Now on the back of a book, the ISBN is the identification number that is attached to the book. So it's basically like its barcode or its social security number. You can follow the sales of that particular book with its ISBN. You'll need that to publish a book. On KDP, they have a free option, which then puts, I do believe, Kindle Direct Publishing as your publisher, like the publishing house. So the margins are a little bit different as far as what you'll get, but you don't have to pay for that ISBN. If you would like to pay for that ISBN, I do believe they are around, give or take, $100. Go to bowker.com, B-O-W-K-E-R. You'll purchase one or packs of them. By the way, you need a different ISBN for every form of book that you release. So if you release it in print form versus an ebook versus an audiobook, all three of those need a different ISBN. So if you're going to purchase them, I would purchase them in a bundle if you're planning on releasing it in different ways. So you have your print file, you have your cover file, you have your ISBN, or you can go through it and just use Amazon's. And that's how you publish the book. It's so simple. Now, how to sell the book after that it's a whole different strategy, much like you would sell any product. But I think the hardest thing about the book is writing the book. And that is incredibly difficult to answer. So once you get to that point, it's just a matter of files and resources. Absolutely. Yes.
A quick question, just about art, and maybe in the style of childish art. Do you have any recommendations for how to, like, improve your skill in that regard? I feel like writing a book and the art styles you use for an adult audience is different than that of a child. I have no idea how to figure that.
Are you by chance an artist or an illustrator?
I'm not.
Okay, neither am I. Right. So, but if I let all the things that I'm not stop me, then I wouldn't become what I need to be. So actually what I did for the art factor, I had fun with all different styles, and I used depositphotos.com. You can purchase commercial rights to images. And then to be honest, every single book has been designed on Canva. And we already have all of these resources, right? Once I found out that I could design a book on Canva instead of paying an illustrator, it was kitty bar the door. I did pay an illustrator on Fiverr. So if your art is not the best and you'd like to have it customized and don't know how to use Canva or maybe like Adobe or something, I did pay an illustrator on Fiverr. Did that twice. And then, like I said, once I found out I could do it on Canva, I could purchase commercial rights to graphics and just kind of make my own scene. It was so much better. So the art just gets better depending on the tools and the platform that you use. And yeah, that would be my answer, just repetition and keep working at it. But if your art's not great, purchase somebody else's. Yeah. Any other questions on self-publishing, talking to kids, curriculum releases? All right. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to talk with you.